Oh, a very good morning to you, sir. You're indeed very early. Sir, you're muted, sir. Sir, you're muted.
Is that better?
Yeah. So I can hear you now.
All right. Oh, that's too much technology.
Times have
Yeah.
changed.
So when you start working in the US and places, the crazy hours that people come to work in the morning is amazing. If you work at a bank, they show up in the morning, traders, at 6 o'clock, 6:15, and so you start getting used to the idea of people being there way before you.
Oh, wow. Actually, I was under the conception that America is very rigid when it comes to their timings because we keep hearing 9 to 5, 9 to 5, right? So,
Oh my God! I wish America were 9 to 5. That would be delightful. It's nowhere near that. It's more like 5 to 9. So,
wow. Um,
so tell me a little bit about yourself. Are you in your final year, second year? What are you?
so I'm in my second year. I'm pursuing economics, and I'm part of the Economic Society. I'm one of the executive council members, and my team's here. So we have our third years, our first years, and we've been working really hard to make this happen. And we are extremely delighted to have you here.
That's a pleasure. We start in a few minutes.
Yeah, we do.
And I see a lady on the screen as well. Hi.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, morning.
How are you, sir?
Very well, very well. What about you? What year are you in? What do you do?
Yeah, sir. I'm Janna Datta. I'm in the first year of Stephens and I'm in BA Economics Honor.
Also, you guys are living in residence or you're day scholars or what?
Sir, as of now, due to Corona pandemic, everything is online. So right now I'm at home. But hoping that the colleges will be opening soon. So we'll be getting that vibe soon. Yeah.
I forgot. Yeah. Colleges are all colleges in India still basically operating online, or have some reopened with different schedules and so on? Like here in the US, there are some that have opened where first years are in, but second years are not, or final years are in and first years are not, that kind of thing.
Actually, sir, what's happening that in some of the regions, colleges have reopened with like 50% attendance of the people, mostly for the sciences background, people from them. So like practicals are going on for the third years. And this is the schedule as of now. Like even in our college, the practical people are coming up from the sciences.
I see. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so it depends upon the location. So like Delhi, for example, is severely affected. So it's not much movement there. But however, in the southern parts of the country, there is some progress, like Banga.
And how's the festival going so far?
So you are our first event. And
I'm the first event. Okay.
Yeah. No, actually,
and how many days is it for now?
2.
2 days.
How many was it during your time?
Same.
Oh, yeah.
I remember it used to be in person, so it used to be fairly intense. A lot of partying at night, but during the day it was pretty intense, and it used to end off sometime on the second day. I'm trying to remember. I was, one of the things I did when I was in college was I was involved with this, but I also was secretary of the Shakespeare Society and the Photographic Society, and I got involved with the union as well. It was a lot of fun. It was one of the benefits of being in residence was that you didn't spend the time commuting, right? So you had a chance to spend the time actually looking at different things you could do, not just academics, but also other things. And it is one of the nicest things that happened to me.
Yeah, that's very true, sir. So like one of the main things that happens before NEF is the last day hassle, where it's just too hectic and you just don't know what's happening. And when you live in res, it makes it that much easier because you end up going to your room at around 11, 12 at night. If you were commuting, most people come from like Gurgaon, Noida, so they have to travel 1 extra hour, and that's
it's hard.
It's very hard.
It's hard. And at our time, traffic was not as crazy as it is now for you. I remember I was there in 1976, 77, 78, right? So 79. So it's a very different time period. I think so traffic density those days, like the ring road used to be, we thought heavy traffic. I mean, that is 20% of the traffic you guys see.
That's true, sir. I guess that's what I guess many of the college students, apart from the cost factor, they tend to stick to public modes of transportation, especially the metro, just because the road has just become
That's
inaccessible.
good. Yeah. We didn't have the metro. We used to take the Mudrika to come down. It used to be called the Mudrika. I don't know what it's called now. It was the ring road bus that went along the ring road from college all the way to southern Delhi if you wanted to go and meet friends. And then, or take the 210 or the 220 into Central Secretariat. I still remember those bus numbers. And then from there, take buses out to South Delhi. So there was no train system worth its while those days. Huh? This metro is all in the last decade and a half, and it's transformative. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's very true. I guess without the metro, I mean, life would be so much more harder
Oh yeah, yeah.
at this
Trust me,
point.
it's a brilliant thing.
Yeah.
So when do we start? Soon?
We'll start in 5 minutes. So
5 minutes?
our viewers, we told them to join by 8. So they would
Oh,
come.
good, good, good. Well, just give me 2 minutes. I'm just going to finish some things, huh?
Yes, yes. So take your time, sir.
All right, I'm back.
So we'll start in a minute or two.
Yeah. Kevin, where's home for you?
So I'm from Kerala, sir, but I live in the Middle East.
Which part of the Middle East?
So I live in Oman.
In Oman?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love Oman. I love the beaches and the water.
Oh wow! When did you visit Oman?
I used to run Central Europe, Middle East, Africa for Citigroup many years ago, and so those are part of my territory. I used to live in London, so I used to go to Oman pretty often. In fact, I've been there a few times. I've been at least 3, 4 times.
Yeah. It's a wonderful place. I mean, I'm glad to
Very
call
nice.
it my half home. People,
How long
people.
have you been?
I've been here for 18 years. Yeah, ever
18
since my
years.
birth. Ever since my birth.
Ah, so your parents worked there.
Yeah, they do.
Always been in Oman, or you moved around?
No, I've always been in Oman. I come to India during the summer vacations, and that's it. So, and Oman, the thing with Oman is also pretty close to the country. So my parents, my dad had gotten offers to work in like Canada and Australia and stuff, but my parents were worried about the fact that being that far away from home would make me lose my identity, especially like pertaining to like knowing the mother tongue and factors as
Sure,
such. So they were
sure.
very what do you call, apprehensive about
Yeah,
father.
yeah. No, I understand that.
Yeah,
It's the best of both worlds in some ways. You're close enough to go back whenever you want, and yet you have the benefit of being in a different system, and it's a good place to be, and you can earn well, and it's very nice.
yeah, that's
How
true.
about you, Jay? Where are you from? You're obviously got a Bengali surname, but are you from Calcutta, or are you actually a local Delhi girl? Or are you a Purvashi? What are you?
No, sir, I'm Janna Datta. I'm basically from Himachal, but right now I'm living at Chandigarh. So yeah.
Himachal, which part? I used to study in Simla.
Oh, that's great. Like even like our ancestors are from Shimla, but like we have been settled in Chandigarh right now.
So I studied at St. Edward School in Simla, finished my schooling there.
Oh, that's great, sir. Shimla is a beautiful place indeed, and the same goes with Chandigarh as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, sir. I guess we can start now. A very good evening to one and all who have gathered here today, and a very good morning to Mr. Ajay Banga, who is joining us from the other corner of the globe. We at the Economic Society are beyond thrilled and honored to have you grace the occasion with your presence today. To start things off, I would like to call upon Ms. Janat Datta to deliver the introductory speech. Over to you, Janat.
A very warm good evening to our audience and a very warm good morning to you, Ajay sir. Today, I, Janna Datta, on behalf of the Economic Society of St. Stephen's College, would like to welcome you all to this interaction session of our flagship event, the National Economics Festival 2021. So today, we have Mr. Ajay Banga with us, with whom we are going to have an interactive question and answer session on the topic, the role of business in giving back to the society. I would like to tell our audience that Mr. Ajay Banga is an alum of our college. He is currently the executive chairman of MasterCard, having previously served as the president and CEO of the company. In 2015, former US President Barack Obama appointed Mr. Banga to serve as a member of the President's Advisory Committee for Trade Policy and Negotiations. Sir has also been awarded with the civilian honor of Padma Shri by the Government of India. It's indeed an honor for all of us to have you here, sir. We warmly welcome you. Now,
Thank you. Thank you.
without further delay, sir, thank you, sir. I would like to invite Mr. Ajay Banga to enlighten us all on the many interesting things that we will be taking up in this session. Welcome, sir. Welcome. Now over to you, Kevin, for the further proceedings.
Thank you so much, Janath. Before we begin, I would just like to brief the audience on the procedure of asking questions to Mr. Ajay. The first few questions are questions that our society has framed, that questions that we as a society wish to ask to Mr. Ajay. To ask your question, you have to type in your question on the chat box and send it privately to comment moderator. So when you type a question, there will be an option where you can send it to a particular person. You should send it to the person named comment moderator. The comment moderator shall go through your questions and choose the particular audience member whose question has been chosen. So right after the moderated questions that the society asked Mr. Ajay, the comment moderator will call upon the audience member to ask his or her question. At that point, the audience member may unmute himself or herself and ask his or her question. You may ask anything, as you can. Mr. Ajay has been very insistent on making this as light and conversation friendly as possible. So you can ask, be it business related or personal. It's up to you. So a very good morning to you, sir. So I know this virtual meeting is not the exact equivalent of being physically back in college, but nonetheless, sir, how do you feel?
I feel very good. And Jonathan, Kevin, thank you for having me. I think it's a pleasure to be back with you guys. I was there about a couple of years back doing a fireside chat with Amitabh Kant at one of the other events at St. Stephen's. And the college looks the same. In fact, it looks even better, which is great for you all. And it brought back a lot of nice memories. I hadn't been back for a long time. And so going back was very nice. And while this is not the same, it's nice to reconnect with young people and people from a college that I respect greatly even now.
So that's great to hear, sir. If this event, if there was any chance we could have this event offline, we would. But we have
Another
to
time. Another
another
time. We've
time
all
for
got to
sure.
get through COVID first.
Exactly. So the first question that when we were given the opportunity to ask you, and the first question that came to most of our minds from the society was, you're an alumnus of St. Stephen's, you were a member of the Economic Society. What did you learn during your time here, and how have you taken that through your career?
Well, I learned from Professor N.C. Ray. He used to teach us, right? I don't know if you read his book still, but he taught us. And one of the first things he said was land, labor, capital are the three important things. And I tell you, land, labor, capital stays with you forever. No matter what you study, no matter where you go, no matter which field you're in, if you remember that the three essential natural resources that you manage as a manager, as a person, as a leader, as anything is land, labor, capital. That's the serious part of it. But I think beyond economics and college and studying, one of the most interesting things about college to me was the fact that I got a chance to work with people who were really smart. You come from school and you come from a smaller school, and you may well be the top ranking student in your class. And then you come to St. Stephen's College, and there are plenty of people like you. They've all top ranked in their schools. And so it forces you to, one, get some humility, which is very important in life. But the second is to raise your game, to be able to feel like you are speaking with equals and you want to learn from them. And I found that to be really interesting. This thing of surrounding yourself with people who are brighter than you and smarter than you and pull you has stayed with me forever. Because you're only as good as the people who you surround yourself with. And that's both in terms of creativity and diversity of thought, but also in terms of stretching you. The second thing you and I were talking about just before we started, along with Jonathan, is the fact that because I was in residence, I didn't commute back and forth. Those days, if you were living in South Delhi and commuting to college, that was an hour and a half commute. I don't know what it is today, but it was an hour and a half at that time. And going and coming, there was 3 hours taken. You couldn't really stay late. I was able to do things with my time that went beyond the academics that St. Stephen's gives you such a good opportunity for. But being in residence, building relationships with my block tutors, whom I'm still in touch with, a couple of them, building relationships with all the friends I made in residence, and the fact that I had a chance to tweak my curiosity to do more than academics. I was involved with the Photographic Society, the Shakespeare Society, with the Union, with all kinds of things on campus. And that I think prepared me better for who I am today. with the desire to do more than just one thing. And that leads me to the final point, which is that you learn very quickly that there's a lot to learn from everybody else. And this idea of learning from everybody else has stayed with me as well. When I was a young guy and I joined Nestle as a management trainee, as an MBA, I was surrounded in my first 6 months in sales training by people who had grown up through the sales ranks, and they were 30 years of experience, 20 years of experience in selling. There was so much to learn from them about the practicality, the way to do it, the things you learned, the tricks of the trade. And so curiosity and the willingness to learn from people who are smarter than you, I think that's kind of stayed with me. And I love that part of St. Stephen's College.
Oh. Sir, I don't know if you know this, but you mentioned Professor N.C. Ray at the start, right? So we have a paper presentation competition named in his memory. So that is one of the events at NEF we have
Yeah,
this
that's
time.
great. That's great.
Yeah, and so one more thing that people always ask whenever they know that you're a Resi, all Resis ask was which block were you in, and secondly, do you know Mr. Dr. Baker?
Yeah, so I was in Walnut North and I did know Dr. Baker. But then after that, kind of it kept going. The system changed. Professor Hala became the head of the residences before he became the principal later. By the time he became principal, we were gone. And that's I'm not going to give you too many stories from residents because they're not explainable on public television.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. That's true. And plus, we have a mixed audience too. It's not just from our
Yes.
college. So yeah, but that's it's really nice to hear your stories. Even though like from 40 years ago, it's really it's nostalgic to me. I don't know why, because
Yeah.
probably because I myself haven't been to college in a year due to the pandemic. So that's there.
Yeah.
So the next question that was very popularly asked was you have worked in India, you've worked abroad. You were telling me that you were the North Africa and Middle East head. You used to live in London. You're currently in America. And I've heard that I remember you saying in an interview that you spent two-thirds of your life traveling. So the question that people want to ask is, what advice do you have for those who are seeking opportunities internationally? There are people who are a bit apprehensive about going abroad. They're like culture shock, a lot of other excuses. Um, could you could you like just elucidate on the advice that you would have for these people?
Yeah. Look, there's no right answer to going abroad or being at home. It's whatever makes you feel better and wherever you think you have more opportunities to allow the real you to prosper, but also be with the people you want to be. It's a question of your own personal proclivity. I had moved so many times because my father was in the army. So growing up, I went to many different schools, a bit like my children have done. Both my daughters have been to 7 or 8 schools before they finished high school in multiple countries because we lived in not just in many cities in India, but we lived in London, in Brussels, in Hong Kong, and in New York, even before the kids had finished high school. So I'd moved a lot of times in school, and then I came to Delhi to study at St. Stephen's, and then went to Ahmedabad to do my MBA, and then joined Nestle and lived in Delhi and lived in Bombay and lived in Calcutta, and so I joined Citibank. I lived in Chennai. I would argue with you that moving to Chennai for a guy who looked like me was as much of a foreign country those days as being otherwise. The language was different, the clothes were different. Here's a good thing: India has created national harmony through food and clothes in some very interesting ways, but language is still quite challenging sometimes. And I spoke English and Hindi fluently and Punjabi, obviously. But I'd learned a little bit of Gujarati and Marathi because of my days in sales in Bombay branch for Nestle, now Mumbai branch. But I hadn't learned the South Indian languages. And so I would tell you, you can either take language, culture, things like that as a challenge, or you can rush towards them to embrace them and make them cater to your innate curiosity and cater to your desire to learn from everybody. Back to what I told you at the beginning. And I would encourage you to make your own choices. There's no right or wrong. You'll make your own. And I have a lot of friends some of my best friends are still in India. They never moved. I stayed in India till I was, 1996. So I was 37 years old. I got a few opportunities to move earlier. I didn't. I stayed there and then moved only in 96 with Citibank. And then I haven't been back to live. I go back all the time on work, but I lived overseas since then. There is no right answer. It's only what matters to you. My feeling was it gave me a chance to play in a bigger pond. It gave me a chance to open my eyes to a lot more. It gave me a chance to allow my children to also see that. But that's for me. That's what worked for me. It may not work for you.
Yes, sir, you're right, sir. It really depends on individual preference. And it's really nice to have a person who has experienced living abroad. It's good to hear advice coming from that perspective too. So the next question we have over here is the pandemic, of course, totally unexpected. Nobody could give any sort of foresight for it. So it really must have been challenging for you to guide your company through it. So how did you guide Mastercard through this unpredictable pandemic?
I mean, the pandemic, if you could ever talk about a black swan event, that would be a black swan event. Although, in hindsight, people talk about how Bill Gates had warned us about the idea of a pandemic being something that could happen, but nobody paid attention. And in all planning at company level and clearly at government levels, nobody was prepared for the manner in which this spread. Now, remember, I told you I'd lived in Hong Kong, so I've seen SARS and SARS-2 and MERS and the impact of all that, all of which originated, a number of them from China at that time. But they came out and they came into Hong Kong, which was very tightly connected, but they didn't spread very much further. And then came Ebola, which started out in Africa and was able to be contained within some African countries, in all these cases at a horrific cost to local populations, both economically, health-wise, and otherwise, but they didn't spread across the world. I think what changed with COVID-19, aside from the fact that it clearly was more infectious and it was airborne and the like, was also the fact that the originating point of this had now become a country with enormous economic clout, where its citizenry traveled frequently, both out of the country, but also a lot of people traveled in because of the fact that that's the size of that market today. And I think, therefore, the spread was way beyond what we had all thought of. And it's hurt everybody. I mean, in the United States, the people who got affected the most are minorities and women, because that's the kind of industry that got impacted the most, is the ones they work in. Small businesses got impacted, restaurants got impacted, hospitality of all types got impacted, stadiums, sports, theater, what we took for granted in our quality of life got impacted. And a lot of the employees there were minorities and women. So it's actually tragic what's happened here. If anything, when people talk about a V-shaped recovery, I think that's wrong. This is more of a K-shaped recovery, where those who have it are doing fine and those who don't are quite challenged. And I think we should be a little careful about assuming that the recovery is taking everybody with it, no matter which country you're in. This is a time to step back and really care about people who got impacted and be humble about it and not be arrogant about it. That's my general impression. At the company, it was the same thing. If the first thing we did was to reassure people that they could work from home. And fortunately, we're in the business of technology, and while we're an essential service, and if your payment system didn't work, there'd be a real problem during this crisis because nobody was using cash. So everything had to work, whether you're paying with a card or a phone or with Paytm, or it had to work. UPI had to work. And so the fact is that these essential services had to work, and some people had to come to work physically to keep that going. But a lot of people were able to work remotely because of the benefit of technology and the way we are constructed. And so we did that. And the second thing we did was to reassure all our employees that they shouldn't worry about themselves and their families in terms of jobs. They should about health, and they should about their clients and their colleagues. But their jobs, we reassured them, we will not do any COVID-related layoffs in 2020. And we stuck to it. Despite the fact that our revenue got impacted, right from March onwards, when the world began to shut down and we went into containment mode, then into stabilization, the bottom, then into some kind of normalization, not real normal. Today is not a real normal, but it's better than a few months ago. And then eventually one day with vaccines and the reopening, we'll go back to a real growth mode. But we reassured our employees, stay with us through it. We will keep you in your jobs. We'll try and keep you safe to the extent we can. So we've invested a lot of money in the offices for filtration systems, social distancing, PPE, sanitizing, masks, and the like. And so those who want to come back to work, we've got them in shifts. We've done all the things we can to put our arms around them. We've given them extended sick leave. We've tried to give them the access to COVID testing free of cost. We've done all that we can to make them stop fearing economically and instead worry about their family and worry about their clients and their colleagues. That was the obvious stuff, but there was other things to do. We put money into a therapeutic accelerator with the Gates Foundation and Wellcome Trust, and we funded it together, the three of us, $125 million to accelerate the development of therapeutic and vaccine drugs through the system. And some of the results of a lot of efforts by many people like us are showing up in the speed of development of vaccines and drugs that can be used to reduce the impact of COVID-19 should you get it. We put money into small businesses and making them digital. In India, we're spending 250 crores on helping small businesses go online and go digital, from creating websites to cybersecurity to enabling them to manage their inventory, to get access to connecting to payments, to enabling their phone to become an instrument of accepting a payment, all kinds of things that otherwise were not happening some time back. So, I could keep going. There's a range of these things, but the idea is to lean into your employees and your community at a time like this.
Yes, sir. So that's what my next question was going to be, because people always have this perception. I mean, it's kind of due to the fact that businesses, as we learn in textbooks, they always say that businesses have the motive of solely profit making, and that kind of puts business in the wrong light. And people keep saying that corporate social responsibility exists only because they have to exist and things like that. And even when I spoke to your team, they were always telling me about how you always thought about giving back to society. So and they said that Mr. Ajay would always love to give a huge talk on business, how businesses give back to society. So my question to you would be, how does MasterCard give back to society, and how in general do you think businesses can give back to society apart from CSR?
There are many parts to that question. So, for me personally, I'm a Sikh, right? So in the Sikh religion, one of the most important tenets is that you reward yourself by serving others. And it's a very simple thing to understand, but it's quite complicated to live up to it, because personal self-interest is a very strong motivator for almost everybody. And there's no right answer, no wrong answer here. It's a balance of how do you do the best for yourself and your family, but also be seen as someone who you can be relied upon to be there for you in good and bad days. And we've tried to do that in the company as well. My belief is that the world's problems all come on three sides of a triangle. And one side is the challenge of one versus many, which is inclusion, whether it's economic challenges, social challenges, your sexual orientation, your ethnicity, your gender, whatever it be. You grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, you weren't born to a rich family, whatever it be, that one versus many is a real problem. And it's one of society's deepest challenges. The other side of the triangle is humanity versus nature, which is climate change, the quality of water, ecology, the air you breathe, green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, all the topics that people are talking about today, that's humanity versus nature. And you see it, unfortunately, in the air in India very often, right? And so those two challenges, the reason that triangle stays up is because the bottom of the triangle is very strong as well. So it supports the other two sides. And that bottom, the third side, is the trade off between long term and short term. Society in all its forms, from politics to individuals, are too incented for short term reactions as compared to long term solutions. These problems on the top of the triangle are long term problems. They need medium to long term solutions. And so finding ways to thread the needle in your life as a person, as a leader, as a civic society member, as an NGO, or even as a profit making corporation is really important. So, making sure that around you the community is healthy is the best way for a company to grow. It's in your own self interest. Think about it this way: if you grow from being lower middle class to middle class, you may buy another TV, you may go from a scooter to a car, or you may go from a car to an air conditioned car, or you may buy two more TVs, or you may buy air conditioners. You will consume more as you grow through the ladder of economic growth. If the rich keep getting richer, they don't buy 17 more TVs. It just doesn't work that way. And so, if you're in the business of producing services, products that rely on a healthy consumption pattern in a country to enable your own wealth to grow as a company, one of the most simple things is to help to develop the middle class around you, help to raise people. Just that's in your own selfish self interest. It's as simple as that. The second part is there isn't enough money with governments and philanthropy, no matter how well intentioned they may be, to solve for the three sides of the triangle. If it was happening with enough money, it would have happened already. It's not enough money. So until you bring the private sector's capital, ingenuity, technology, people to the party, you're not going to have a party. And so my belief is that for my own sake, for the sake of my children, for the sake of my friends, for the sake of caring about rewarding yourself by serving others, you can make money, but you can also do the right thing. As people say, you can do well and do good, or you can, do good by doing well. You can play with those words any which way you feel. All they mean is do both things. And that's what we have tried to do in our company from everything, from reassuring our employees during COVID that they will not get laid off despite the obvious pressures on our revenue and expenses, to caring deeply about financial inclusion, where we made a commitment to reach 500 million people by 2020 back in 2014. We did, and now we've upped it to a billion, including 50 million micro SMEs and 25 million women entrepreneurs. Or this commitment to priceless planet, where we are trying to work with our partners to plant 100 million trees by incentivizing consumers to do the right thing, meaning don't take a taxi, take the metro, and we'll plant a tree for you. Things like that, because planting trees, people understand. Carbon taxes and carbon capture is an esoteric term that people don't understand. Planting trees, everyone understands. And they feel they can contribute to making the world a better place. So we're trying to use our network, our technology, our people, our ingenuity, our capital to come to the party on the sides of the triangle and work together. That's my belief. And I know that people have talked about shareholder primacy in the past. I understand that. And a lot of people moved that way. But the fact is that capitalism has done a lot of good work over the last few decades to lift people out of poverty, including in India, where India has done a remarkable job of lifting people out of poverty. But there's much more to do. And there's more to do on the one versus many, but there's also more to do on humanity versus nature. And you need to do that the right way. And listen, our company, in my 11 years as CEO, has gone from a market cap of $20 billion to $350 billion. 17 and a half times our market capitalization has grown. But we've done the right thing as well. And that's embedded in the idea of bringing your heart and your mind to work and bringing your decency quotient to work, not just your IQ or your EQ, but your DQ to work. And I can answer that separately, but it's a big question you asked, and there's many ramifications to it. So, maybe in the Q&A, we'll get a chance to talk about that.
Yes, sir, absolutely. I mean, so your figures itself are living proof of the fact that you can do well by doing good. So lastly, I think last question that we had was recently you got promoted to executive chair of MasterCard.
I got
So what do you
kicked
see as
upstairs
you...
to executive chair. I didn't get promoted. I got kicked upstairs. Yeah.
So what do you see as your mission now, and what are your goals, or does it just remain the same?
Yeah, no, it's not the same actually, because I told our board when I joined 11 years back that in 10 years' time, if I do well, and I'm still lucky enough to be here for the 10 years, and remember that the average public company CEO has a 4.6, 4.7 year tenure. So, I mean, that's part of the short term versus long term issue. You see what I mean? So, I was lucky. We had a good run. The board liked me, supported me, investors supported me, employees supported me, and I'm still here. So I spent 11 years as CEO. And I told the board if I do 10, at the end of 10, would be the right time for me to move on and have a new person, fresh eyes, person for the next leg of the race with fresh legs to run. And we were lucky. We've developed a bunch of very good people in the company, and we went through a deep evaluation process, looking inside and outside. And my successor is a person who's been here for the last 9 years, Michael Mibach, who's terrific. And he's doing a great job, and he's settled in really well. And on the 1st of January, he became CEO, but he worked with me for the last year as the president while I was still CEO. And he's perfectly well entrenched and settled. So what I'm doing now is to make sure that I don't overlap with him. I know he doesn't need me to do what he's doing. He needs his space. That is the whole idea of having fresh legs and a fresh pair of eyes. So my focus is on the external world to help him with clients, regulators, opinion leaders, topics like financial inclusion, topics like the Priceless Planet Coalition that I just spoke about, topics about the triangle. I'm doing this with World Economic Forum. We've created something called the Edison Alliance, which is chaired by the CEO of Verizon. And the idea is to take digital technology and see if we can make an impact on education, healthcare, and inclusion. Things like that, where I can be helpful to Michael's work, where he is running the company. He's the boss. And my job is to manage the board as executive chair, but also to help him with all these external relationships and give them over to him as time goes by so that I can make myself redundant sooner rather than later and then go and do something else. I don't know what it is, but I'll do something else.
Wow, that's great. Um, so have you ever thought about what you want to do though?
Yeah, it's unclear to me. I've just begun to think about it now. Over the last month that I've had some time. You remember I told you I traveled 240 days in a year. It's kind of not the most conducive way to give yourself time. You're all the time dealing with jet lag and work and clients and employees. And so this is the first month I've had. So my first promise to myself is I'm going to spend 3 months, 6 months to committing to nothing. I'll take all the incoming calls. I'll listen to everybody. I'm open for advice. But I'm not going to say yes to anything. But my inclination is to have 3 or 4 things behind me. One is to remain connected to young people and their causes. And that brings me back to that triangle. I think your world, you're the future. You guys are where the world is going. And for you, equality and climate are, for most of you, is very close to your way of thinking. Our generation didn't do a good job on that. You guys are much more committed, your generation as a whole, to doing things the right way on both of those things. And I find that inspiring. I find it fun. And my children inspire me. My wife inspires me around these topics. So I want to remain involved with that in some way. And I don't know how to do that, but I want to do it in a commercial way, not just a philanthropic way, because I believe there isn't enough money in philanthropy, as I told you, to make a difference. So I want to find a way to influence and drive that change quicker and harder. And I think the environment in the world is conducive to it. There's a lot more movement on what we call ESG thinking, which talks about the kinds of things I'm discussing with you. And so I'm hopeful that maybe I'll get a chance to play some role in that space.
So all the very best to you, sir, in your mission.
Thank you.
So now we've come to the end of the moderated Q&A session. I would now request the comment moderator to call out the audience members whose questions have been chosen.
Um, so I'll be calling out names and you can unmute yourselves and ask the question personally to sir. Mufti Tahar Shah, you can unmute yourself and you can ask the question personally to sir.
Yeah. Good morning, sir, and good evening, everyone else. And yeah, good morning to different people in different parts of the world. So I wanted to ask you about cryptocurrencies and what your thoughts on them are, and do you think they have the potential to maybe challenge and replace traditional currencies?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for asking that. Can I step back a little bit and talk about blockchain first and then cryptocurrencies, if you don't mind? I think cryptocurrency is just one use of a very powerful technology, which is blockchain. And the idea of enabling a distributed way of recording ownership or transactions or the movement of something, product for money, goods for barter, ownership of a house, buying a car, your educational degree that I hope you will soon get from St. Stephen's College, things like that, or wherever you study. I don't know where exactly. Are you at St. Stephen's?
Yes, I'm in the third year of
Great,
economics.
great. Well, congratulations. I love that college, as you know. So for me, it's very easy to congratulate you for being there. Whatever that be, that transaction, blockchain is an interesting way to record that. Now, many things need to happen for that to reach its full potential, not least of which is that the legal system and the governmental system of a country needs to recognize a transaction recorded on a blockchain as a valid transaction. I mean, imagine if I sold you a house and we had a dispute about it later. You found asbestos in it, and I hadn't told you. So now you have to spend a lot of money on fixing it, and you come back to get back some money from me, and we go to court to fight. And the judge says, show me the ownership papers. And you say it was in the blockchain recorded by 50,000 anonymous people with Japanese names who may be living in Mongolia. No judge will accept that. You see, so the blockchain is an interesting idea, but it needs to evolve to a place where civil society can embrace this technology as a fundamental right and then build on it the right way. The same is true of cryptocurrencies, which are built out of the blockchain. It's one use case. With the blockchain, our company has invested a lot in blockchain. We are now one of the top 3 or 4 patent holders in blockchains. So we are doing things like proof of provenance. The shirt I'm wearing, if I claim it's made from Egyptian cotton, I should be able to prove it is Egyptian cotton. Or the food that you bought, the prawns you bought, if they were meant to be organically grown, you want to be able to prove that they were organically grown, or so on, or that the medicines you're buying are not counterfeit, or that the painting you bought is genuine, or that the diamonds you bought for your mother or your girlfriend or your wife are not blood diamonds. You see what I mean? Those proof of provenance is a great use of the blockchain, and we're experimenting a lot in that space. One use is cryptocurrency. There we've invested a lot, but more in the central bank digital currency area, where central banks could issue a digital rupee, a digital dollar, or like the Chinese are doing a digital yuan. And a number of central banks around the world are now engaging on this idea, and we're actually helping them. We have created sandboxes where commercial banks, central banks can experiment with how to use digital central bank currencies with the reliability of those. The problem with cryptocurrencies that are not fiat currencies is threefold. One is stability and volatility. If they're too volatile, they're not really a currency. You can't buy a Coca-Cola with something that changes price every 15 minutes. Because then otherwise that bottle of Coke is now worth 50 rupees, and then it's worth 300 rupees, and then it's worth 22 rupees. Nobody can do business like that. So you need some stability and predictability in the currency. Second, you need some transparency to comply with the rule of law. Take India. India does not want unknown people transacting to bring money in for unknown reasons. It could be for terrorism, it could be for cross-border security, it could be for drugs, it could be for pornography, it could be for things that society does not accept as decent. And so that's another issue. And the third is you don't want this currency to be used in a way that it violates your privacy. If there is no business model behind it, then you should know that your data may be used in ways that you don't want it to be used. Forget about data going overseas or domestic. That's a bogey dispute. Whether it goes overseas or it stays in India, that's not. What is it used for? Is your data, wherever it lies, is it used so that you benefit as a citizen, as a consumer, so that you know what it's being used for and you can choose for it not to be used? That's really important. And so I believe in all those aspects. So to me, back to your question, I think central bank digital currencies, fiat currencies, are probably going to evolve and become real over the next 7, 5, 7, 8 years, 10 years, more and more in different countries. But they may come in a way that creates transparency, compliance with the law, and a consumer's right to privacy. And when that's done, then we'll be in a really good place. There may be other things like stable coins, which answer some of these problems. If they can also answer the data and compliance, then I think they may also have a role to play. But governments will want central banks, by and large, I think, to control the supply of currency in a society.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Mufti. Common moderator, next question.
I will be asking a question on behalf of Aditya Sharma. How will India's ban on cryptocurrency affect the Indian markets?
Yeah. See, again, that's part of the earlier question a little bit. India is in the process of thinking through its cryptocurrency rules, right? And they want to establish, I think they've got all these principles in their mind. Who knows exactly what law they will finally pass? I'm not privy to that knowledge, but I believe they will care about the citizens' right to privacy. They will care about knowing your customer and anti-money laundering. They will care about a level playing field for fintechs and banks and people and merchants. I think they will try and find a good balance when creating that law. I think they will probably not be happy with privately held cryptocurrencies that they cannot manage or control if they don't meet all these needs. And I'm kind of in agreement with that basic principle.
Well, there are a lot of questions on cryptocurrency today. Common moderator, do you have another question?
Yes, Purvi Gupta, you can unmute and ask the question.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you. So my question is a little bit more personal, sir. So two questions. One, since you yourself did an MBA from IMA, do you think in the post-COVID world doing an MBA makes sense? And secondly, when we look at the job market in India, we see a clear distinction between two kinds of companies. One is something like an established company, let's say like a Nestle, and then we see these growing startups. So what do you think would be a better idea for a person entering the job market to work for in the initial years?
Well, let me answer the second question first. There's no right answer. I mean, I started in Nestle, and I've worked in established companies all my life, and I would argue I've had a great time and I've done well. There are others who have worked in startups and have done really well too. The thing about startups is that you only read about the startups that were successful. But the very nature of startups is that out of 10, 9 will not succeed. One will. And so if you have the right approach to it and you're willing to be taking the right kind of risks in life, and I would argue that thoughtful risk taking is an important part of life, then depending on where your balance comes on that risk profile, it's not a bad thing to do. My general view is that innovation and creativity are really required in the world to solve those three sides of the triangle. That the humanity versus nature, one versus many, and the long term versus short term. And so if you can find yourself entering a startup that does work in those areas, boy, I would encourage you to do it, because the world needs your creativity and it needs your innovation to do something like that. It doesn't mean that large companies cannot provide you with that environment. I think many people who work with us get a chance to do creative, innovative things while working in a company that is stable and has capital and an expense base to enable scaling of their idea. But Again, there's no right answer. So it's what works for you. The part about doing an MBA, both my daughters have just finished a few years ago their MBAs, and I encourage them to do them because my view is doing another degree, doing a master's degree after your undergrad is just a way of opening your mind to a broader canvas and a broader way of thinking and building a broader network. And remember, I started out by talking about to Kevin, in fact, about the idea of curiosity, of surrounding yourself with people who're smarter than you, of learning from everybody. So, getting a chance to go study something else for a couple of years, I mean, I think you're lucky if you can do that. And if you can afford it, I would do it.
Right, sir. Okay, thank you.
Muskan Sabarwal, you can unmute yourself and ask, sir.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you're
Yes, you
audible.
are.
Thank you so much. A very good morning, sir. Right. So, since you've been like associated with MasterCard since a very long time, so like, how do you like, what do you feel is the biggest strength, like, which actually, just accommodated to the success of MasterCard as compared to the rival companies? Like, do you feel that MasterCard has had any competitive advantage towards other companies like American Express, etc.?
Yeah, well, thank you. That's a complicated question, but I'd say the root of our competitive advantage comes from our culture and our people. And one thing I will tell you is that while a lot of people talk about product and technology and all that as being the source of their competitive advantage, if you think through all the successful companies over the years or the entrepreneurs over the years, it is the people they have and the people they surround themselves with that creates the culture that drives them to success. And I would never, ever undervalue that aspect. And our culture is of people who want to win, but they want to win in a constructive way with decency at the core of how they win. Inside the company, we use words like, your hand should be on my back, not on my face, right? Or that good news should take the staircase and bad news should take the elevator. Because you need the bad news to come to you first so you can fix it. A lot of people always give you good news, but actually it's the bad news that a leader can make a difference to. These are all small ways of bringing to life the idea of a culture where people's dissent, people's views are welcome and are encouraged, and therefore thoughtful risk taking is encouraged, competitive paranoia is encouraged, the desire to learn from people is encouraged, right? I think that's our single biggest competitive advantage. There are many other things we have done. We've embraced technology. We have card in our name, but actually we're not a credit card company. I can't issue a card to you. The bank does, or the fintech that you work with does. And all these fintechs, most of them work on our rails. People talk about PayPal, and PayPal's CEO is a very good personal friend and a very good partner of our company. But they run on our rails, and we work as really good partners because we're not a consumer company. We're a B2B company. PayPal is a consumer company. And so we know our place in the value chain, and we don't try and be who we are not. We don't try and claim who we are not. And I think that's all part of our culture of humility and being with people. And I really hope the company retains that over the next decade, because to me, that is our real secret weapon. Our technology, of course, our data practices, of course, our strategies, of course, but our people first.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really great.
Thank you.
Before we continue, sir, I would just like to know for how long could you stay at this meeting, because we know you have a very busy schedule. And
I can stay for another 10 to 15 minutes.
all right, sir. So I guess we can take up one final question from the audience. Comment moderator.
Okay, so Shreya Murarka, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. You can unmute yourself.
Hello. Good morning,
Hi.
sir.
Hi.
It was lovely hearing from you and also lovely hearing about college. Made us all feel very nostalgic. I had one question for you. Yes. So, sir, my question was, what would your advice to budding social entrepreneurs be? And I'm asking this because you mentioned how your next stint would be to use commercialization or the markets to maximize social impact.
Yeah, you interested in becoming a social entrepreneur, Shreya?
Yes, that's part of the plan. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I think the wind is in your sails, and I think you should think about your future with optimism. Of course, be scared, but think about it with optimism, and think about bringing the whole of you to the party. I really believe this, that there are too many issues in our world right now, and for your generation to look back 40 years from today and feel good about what you've done, you have a unique opportunity to build on many enablers. And one of the biggest enablers is the kind of technology that is now sweeping the world. The internet, 5G, the Internet of Things. These are amazing enablers that we didn't have in our time. They only came up relatively recently. And I think a cycle of learning is happening with the internet of how useful it is, but how it needs to be managed within guide rails so that society benefits from it and it cannot be used for other things. But I think we're learning as a society. And I think the same way, a lot of the products we produced and the way we have consumed products over the years has been great for our own personal lives, but not great for the environment. And so you guys are into an interesting space. And if you look at that triangle and you understand it with care, you will find almost every problem that a social entrepreneur wants to go and address fits into the three sides of that triangle. And if you hold that triangle at the center of your heart, I am convinced you will win. So my encouragement to you is go do it. Go try and do it. At least give yourself a chance to do it. If it doesn't work out, there's many other things you can do. But you don't want to look back 40 years from today and say, I didn't give it a try. So do it. Give it a try.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for patiently answering all our questions. It truly was an insightful experience listening to your wise words. Now, I would like to call upon Professor Sanjeev Grewal, Head of Department of the Department of Economics, to say a few words. Over to you, sir.
On behalf of the Economics Department, I would like to thank Mr. Banga very much. His words were truly words of wisdom, honesty, and he spoke with a lot of passion. And for our current students, I think nothing works better than seeing a very successful role model from whom they can also learn how to give back to society. Mr. Banga, although he has not, he said he hasn't been coming to college very frequently, but he has been contributing to college also. He mentioned Professor N.C. Ray, and one of our students told that we have an N.C. Ray Memorial debate. But we also, Mr. Banga's batch actually, it was 19th batch of 1979, which endowed a scholarship in honor of Professor N.C. Ray. This is given to a third-year female student who has shown some special aptitude in the subject that Professor Ray used to teach, microeconomics. And through that scholarship interviews, I've come to know many of the classmates of Mr. Banga who have visited the college to be on the selection committee for that scholarship. Mr. Shailendra Mehta, Poonam Chopra, Mala Tandon, and of course, Mr. Ravinder Singh, who was coordinating on behalf of the batch. It's a very illustrious batch, Mr. Banga's batch. We have a sitting Supreme Court judge from that batch, a former chief economic advisor to Government of India who has visited
Actually,
college.
two sitting Supreme Court judges, Dhananjay and Sanjay Kishan Kaul.
Oh, okay. So Sanjay is also from your batch. I was thinking of Dhananjay. So yes, Sanjay Kishan Kaul has very frequently visited college. first when he actually used to live very close to college when he was a
Yeah,
judge in
we used to
Delhi
all
High
go
Court.
to his house to get away from college food.
Yes, yes, and it's a beautiful house very close to college in the civil lines. Uh, uh, and Arvind Subramaniam, who as chief economic advisor, has given talks several times in college. Uh, and that I think was a wonderful time when, and maybe still I think it's a wonderful time. I'm old, and so we are always nostalgic about old times. But I think the present batch of students, maybe 20 years, 30 years from now, will take inspiration from people like Mr. Banga and maybe achieve greater heights. Who knows? So I'm very grateful to Mr. Banga who has taken time of his very busy schedule, and we have all benefited enormously from he has been his humility, his wisdom, his passion, and his sense of civic responsibility. I think that will inspire all of us. And he has also given very practical advice to young minds. These are difficult times. They have anxieties, they have questions, and Mr. Banga has very patiently tried to answer each question. So thank you, Mr. Banga, very much on behalf of the college. I hope that we will have this opportunity in the future also to benefit from association with you. And when things are a little better, there'll be nothing better than you physically visiting college, maybe spending a few days with our students.
Sure.
I think nothing benefits students more than that. Just to be in live association, if you could, be with them, visit the cafe, eat with them, and talk to them and nurture them. So if your busy schedule ever permits that, spend at least a day or two in college. We will really appreciate that. I also want to thank the Economic Society office bearers who have organized this wonderful talk. Uh, uh, and they haven't let the pandemic stop them. This tradition that we have of National Economics Festival, they've kept that. And I think the participation is excellent. They've also organized a whole array of activities, all online, of course, because students are not physically here, and a wonderful series of talks from very reputed academics. I'm sure that all of us will benefit from that. So thank you very much, everybody. I will not take more time of you. Thanks, Mr. Banga, and thanks to everybody. And thanks all the
Thank you very
participants.
much. Thank you. Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you guys. We have come to the end of our call. Um, we'll be ending the meeting soon. We would like to thank the